The walls of an underwater tunnel started getting blurry and going double in Judy Bedard's eyes. Her eyelids became heavy and her breathing labored. Suddenly, the diver felt nausea and pain in the chest, and her arms and legs seemed to become paralyzed. At some point, she just lost control over her body. At a depth of 30 meters, Judy went unconscious and started falling into the claws of the notorious dark abyss called Eagle's Nest, which so often claims the lives of divers. Did Judy manage to regain consciousness and survive? As always, viewer discretion is advised. Eagle's Nest sinkhole in the western part of Florida attracts enthusiasts of the extreme from all over the world. It's famous for its convoluted system of underwater caves and chambers, lying at different depths and connected with tunnels. The lowest point of Eagle's Nest reaches the mark of 95 meters. Since only certified divers are allowed to traverse the depth of 60 meters, newbies are better off staying away from this place. Furthermore, only after obtaining special training is it possible to learn to navigate the narrow and convoluted underwater tunnels. Yet a special feature of Eagle's Nest passages is that the water is muddy there, near the lake, as well as in it. Signs warn visitors of its danger. Eagle's Nest sinkhole is even called Everest for diving, and not everyone succeeds in conquering it. In the time from 1981 to 2018, 12 people died in the cave. This number includes newbies and professionals alike. On September 11, 2005, 48-year-old Judy Bedard, a certified diver, arrived at Eagle's Nest with her friend Rudy Banks. They started their submersion, and everything seemed to be going smoothly at first. Yet when the divers were at a depth of 40 meters, something went wrong with Judy's equipment. She switched to her tank containing a mixture of gases called Trimix and started going back up, accompanied by her partner. Trimix is used for diving deeper than 30 meters. It has reduced levels of nitrogen and oxygen compared to the air we normally breathe, as helium is added into the mix. The greater the depth, the more helium and the less oxygen and nitrogen there should be in the Trimix. Between the two tanks, there's a valve that allows the elements to be mixed in the right proportions. This mix is necessary when the diver is surfacing quickly, as the pressure of the surrounding air decreases quickly, which can cause tiny gas bubbles to appear in the blood and tissues. This is called decompression sickness. It causes dizziness, numbness in the extremities, coordination loss, and, in the end, a person can even die. So at some point, Judy switched to breathing Trimix to avoid this. However, at a depth of 30 meters, she suddenly went unconscious. Rudy was confused because he had to do something immediately to save his friend. He started slowly dragging Judy with him upward to avoid triggering decompression sickness. Yet when only 18 more meters separated him from the surface, Rudy was horrified to realize that Judy had stopped breathing. The man panicked, as now both fast and slow ascent would be equally dangerous. He decided it was better to get his friend to the surface as soon as possible, thinking that in this way, the woman would have a chance at rehabilitation after decompression sickness. A slow ascent, however, would most likely end in death for Judy. After surfacing, Rudy immediately started resuscitating his friend. Judy's eyes were wide open and she had no pulse already. All of this pointed to the fact that the woman was on the verge of dying. Yet Rudy didn't lose hope, and, together with two other local rescuers, he started giving his friend rescue breathing and calling 911 at the same time. In 15 to 20 minutes, Judy's heart started beating again, and her breathing resumed. Yet she remained unconscious and needed medical help, and the ambulance car got stuck in a nearby forest. Judy ended up being transported to the hospital in the backseat of an all-terrain vehicle and without an IV treatment that she sorely needed. Meanwhile, a helicopter had already landed in a clearing in the forest to get Judy to the hospital as fast as possible, as every passing second exasperated the impact of decompression sickness. When doctors finally examined the woman, their verdict was that her condition was critical. The hope of Judy getting better was futile. Treatment in a hyperbaric chamber that accelerates the disappearance of gas bubbles from the blood and the tissues caused Judy to develop kidney failure. The woman also suffered from frequent heart attacks. All this time, Rudy was beside himself, plagued with constant remorse. He couldn't understand whether he'd made the right decision when he took her to the surface fast. Could he have ruined the life of his close friend in this way? Yet the investigation revealed the culprit in the incident to be the equipment Judy hadn't double-checked before diving. She didn't pay attention to the fact that she'd closed the shutoff valve conjoining the two tanks. This skewed off her trimix proportions. Thankfully, the woman regained consciousness after 2 long months and had to learn to walk all over again. The doctors called her recovery a miracle. Yet the part that surprised me the most was that after the incident, the diver didn't abandon her hobby. She even achieved her dream of diving in the Gulf of Mexico. Yet Judy's story is likely to be one of the only ones in which a diver left Eagle's Nest alive after a dive went wrong in its creepy tunnels. In 2014, Darren Spivey and his son Dylan Sanchez set out for Eagle's Nest. Darren had been passionate about diving for his entire life, and his son, a freshman at Hernando High School, shared his father's enthusiasm. However, neither Dylan nor Darren had any specialized training in cave diving. 6 months before that, Spivey met Robert Brooks, an experienced cave diver who became his mentor. Since to become certified, you have to go on a study dive with a few different professionals. Brooks insisted on Darren getting a cave certification, yet the man continued diving, relying solely on his skills and luck. Spivey and his son had already submerged into the convoluted tunnels of Eagle's Nest a few times, despite all the prohibitions. And this time, they were about to do it once again. The divers had planned to submerge into the so-called ballroom that reaches a depth of 61 meters. At first, they hadn't been planning to go any farther, but once at the spot, the father and the son dared to leave the relatively safe chamber and headed for a long, narrow passage. After diving to a depth of 70 meters, they realized the supply of gas mix in their tanks was dwindling fast. But it was already too late. When the divers started struggling to breathe, they started using normal compressed air instead of trimix, which is critically important at such depths. That's why soon, both of them started feeling the symptoms of decompression sickness. They were experiencing the same pain as Judy. Yet, in the female diver's case, her partner was conscious and managed to get her out. As for the father and the son, they were both trapped. Darren and Dylan needed to return to the surface as quickly as possible. It was already incredibly difficult to breathe, and their hearts were pounding at a crazy speed. As it happens during nitrogen narcosis, the divers were disoriented but still managed to return to the ballroom with much effort. It was hard to keep moving. The hope of rescue got reignited when Holly, Darren's fiancée, panicked because her loved one hadn't picked up his phone for an hour already. Without a second thought, the woman went to Eagle's Nest herself and informed the police, the rescuers, and Darren's mentor, Robert Brooks. Robert immediately found 2 other certified cave divers to help with the search. Wading through the muddy water, they noticed Dylan's silhouette at a depth of 20 meters, but he was already dead. Dylan's lifeless body was floating just below the ballroom ceiling, 39 meters deep. The rescuers found Darren, who also showed no signs of life. Judging from the positions of their bodies, we can presume Darren's air tank supply ran out fast, and he sank to the bottom, while Dylan was frantically trying to go up, but failed to find the exit. However, even tragic cases like this can't stop the daredevils who continue diving into the tunnels of Eagle's Nest sinkhole. They even make the task harder for themselves by, for example, diving with no air whatsoever. On July 18, 2018, 32-year-old Sang Nguyen, 20-year-old Syed Marjane, and 4 of their friends were diving at Eagle's Nest without any scuba gear. That is, they were engaging in freediving, during which divers submerged with a single breath of air. In addition, it was the first time any of the guys were diving in this area. All in all, the spirits were high, and the divers were submerging as deep as they could simultaneously, comparing who had the most stamina. Yet no one had any idea what this innocent game would turn into soon. After the friends did around 15 or 20 dives, Saeed decided to set his personal record. His goal was to dive to a depth of around 24 meters. Another dive was happening. Nguyen, who didn't like the whole idea of competing in the first place, submerged to around 15 meters and went back up, unwilling to risk. The rest of the guys soon started emerging on the surface, but Marjane wasn't one of them. Nguyen started panicking. He knew that his friend was able to hold his breath for up to 4 minutes, 3 of which had already passed. So he immediately swam to the ground to call 911. The rest rushed to dive for Marjane, but he was nowhere to be found. It had been far longer than 4 minutes since he'd dived. First responders failed to find the diver, so they had to call a civilian dive team. Only on the following day, the guy's dead body was found at a depth of 46 meters. An average person can dive while holding their breath to a depth of 3 to 5 meters. Skilled divers can reach a depth of 14 to 18 meters. However, professionals who dive to a depth of over 18 meters can deal with the effect of underwater pressure on the ears. There are a few methods of doing it. One of them is to exhale sharply while keeping your mouth, nose, and vocal cords closed. Yet Saeed wasn't an experienced diver who could do it right. Most likely, an intense pain in his ears disoriented him, and he didn't start surfacing on time. And then he probably panicked and swallowed too much water, which caused him to drown. But not every tragic story has enough clues to explain the causes of death in Eagle's Nest. On October 15, 2016, Chris Rittenmeyer and Patrick Peacock did a pre-planned dive in Eagle's Nest sinkhole. Both men were certified divers with many years of experience in ocean and cave diving. In addition to having dived in Eagle's Nest before, they had all of the necessary equipment, including scooters, appliances with a propeller meant to speed up a diver's movement. Their tanks were supposed to last them through any unforeseen circumstances. On the day before the dive, they had also placed small bailout bottles with extra air under the water along the planned route to be used if their tanks failed. And even that's not all. Chris and Patrick also left tanks with a mixture of gases for decompression in the cave. On the surface, another diver was waiting for them. He was supposed to react if the two men didn't return by a designated time. At around 2 p.m., the divers put on their closed-circuit rebreather systems, which process some of the exhaled air and allow the person to reuse it. The men took everything they needed and started the submersion. Yet, they didn't return when they were supposed to. At 6 p.m., their companion, who was waiting at the surface, called the diver's friend, John Burnett. He immediately left for Eagle's Nest and called a team of first responders. So, the first search team consisted of divers John Burnett and Charlie Robertson. They started the search at around 11 p.m. and returned to the surface at 3:30 in the morning, but with no success. The second search team continued the effort at 3:45 a.m. and went downstream. There, at the entrance of the cave's chamber, the rescuers found the two dead bodies. Chris and Patrick were at a depth of around 73 meters, not far from each other. So, what could have killed certified divers since they took the utmost care to follow all the safety regulations in Eagle's Nest? The first thing that caught the rescuers' attention was that for some reason, the first diver's scooter was turned off and lying on the room floor. A breathing tube had fallen out of his mouth and was partially crushed. The diver's flashlight and his emergency decompression tank were also missing. Another diver had only his dry suit, mask, and flippers, but was missing his rebreather system, bottles with extra air, and a flashlight. It was unclear what had forced him to take off his gear. The data from Chris and Patrick's diver computers gave the rescuers reason to believe that one of them had passed the pit restriction and waited for his partner. When the other diver didn't show up, he tried to go back and got in some kind of trouble. There's also yet another unsolved mystery. For some reason, the divers left a fully functional breathing system and a full emergency bottle near the pit restriction exit. To this day, the police haven't managed to tie all these clues together in a cohesive sequence of events. Even today, we're left guessing what happened to those two professional divers in the ominous Eagle's Nest. Eagle's Nest is such a strange place that a diver can die here for the most unexpected reasons. For instance, 53-year-old Davin Brannon, who was a pretty experienced diver, died in the first room of the cave before even approaching the pit restriction. His partners, who accompanied him, didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. It was a pretty straightforward technical submersion, and suddenly, Davin went unconscious and never came around again. The man is presumed to have died due to a heart attack. Some people are starting to think the lake is cursed. Would you dare conquer this Everest for diving? Write your answers in the comments and subscribe to the channel. I have plenty of mysterious stories about fearless enthusiasts of the extreme that I plan to discuss with you.